In New York, we have Kevin Sanders, Director, War and Peace Foundation. Is an agreement on a withdrawal date a success for the Iraqi government and a failure for the U.S. administration? Kevin Sanders, your ideas.
Well, yes, probably a failure for this particular administration, or at least certainly for elements within it that were behind the involvement in Iraq in the first place. It's fascinating to see all these resolutions and moves starting to converge, and even without listening to the words, one hears the music. The music is everyone's getting out as fast as they can, faster than anyone might have imagined. And in the broadest sense, that is a good thing. It is the end of the 7 years during which the Bush administration has been running amok in Iraq. It's good news for the United Nations, which is also involved in this now, moving toward finding some way of settling the problems, finding some way of allowing enough of the elections to go on, and to leave the always and forever troubled question of Kirkuk with the oil area, which is probably the most important area of Iraq as far as the United States and the administration is concerned. They're leaving that till later. So the way is open, doors are being opened, pathways are being found out of the mess. And I think that is an altogether good thing. That doesn't mean that peace and prosperity will reign suddenly, but at least it is an end of the grotesquely misplaced American involvement. And from the point of view of the administration, it certainly isn't the end that they had in mind, but probably it's a recognition that there is no other way available now, that they have indeed, as you said, that they have failed. And they're putting the best possible look on it, that this is not a failure, this is victory. Victory, you see, we've achieved what we want and now we can leave. But however it's phrased, leave and call it victory, so be it, but it is the end or the beginning of the end of American involvement in this tragedy. The Bush administration wanted to stay there forever. That was the plan for the whole thing. They would storm in, take over Iraq, set up a puppet government, and have control of the oil. It hasn't worked out that way at all. And this is now obvious. And it's obvious that there's no alternative but to find a graceful, or as graceful as possible, way out. And that's what's happening now. And of course, looming over all of this, or looming as a great shadow, or suddenly dawning as a great opportunity, depending on how you look at it, is the coming new administration. Very likely, I still think very likely, an Obama administration. And an Obama administration already has made it clear that its policies will be quite different. And I think that all of the plans that the Bush administration had in the beginning of setting up a permanent presence there will have to be revised and will be abandoned. It's rather amusing to watch McCain struggling to try to keep up with the changing currents. He was suddenly abandoned by the Bush administration when, apparently without warning, Bush suddenly changed his plans and changed his policy and his rhetoric utterly by announcing that America would support what they called a time horizon to get out of Iraq. Now, this was new. Less than a month earlier, Bush had been speaking about victory and suggesting anybody who even spoke about a timeline to get out being guilty of treason or something. So this is how quickly it has changed. And it has left John McCain rather stranded with his talk about, we'll stay there 100 years if we need.
Obama has recently said, we seek no presence in Iraq similar to our permanent bases left back in South Korea. At the same time, he said a residual U.S. presence may remain in Iraq in order to protect, train Iraqi security forces, and pursue and track down international terrorists. Those were his exact words. But keeping residual forces, as referred in his wording, requires heavy fortifications, installations, and basically a state of readiness for a rapid deployment for, let's say, going to war. Now, how do you explain this contrast? And if you could get into the minds of those sitting in the White House, what would you see there?
Well, I think that is a useful approach, by the way, because I don't think one should minimize the differences between the two men, the two humans. Obama and McCain come from very different backgrounds. McCain is a military man. His father was an admiral. His grandfather was an admiral. He has a fairly simple view of things. It is the military. He sees everything in military terms. Somehow all problems can be solved by a strong military presence and a little bit of bombing from time to time. This is very different from Obama. Obama is very suspicious of the military, and he has spoken, I think, very courageously, although it hasn't been widely reported, very courageously about cutting back the military budget and looking again at all of the funding for all of the sometimes quite crazy ideas the military has been pushing. He's not anti-military, but he's very skeptical of the military. And so the sort of policies that would be adopted will be very different between the two men. And so I think that as far as Obama and the likelihood of an Obama victory, it does suggest that while there will be, and inevitably there's going to be some residual presence, even if it's only a diplomatic representative. Now, you're talking about troops on the ground as needed. That is a very broad phrase. There could be anything from 10 to 10,000 or 100,000. And the figure is very much likely to be very much lower under an Obama administration than under a McCain administration.